Some of the discussions I had with Damon at first appeared to sound reasonably intellectual when he asked me about the history of humanity and races on Earth. I spoke to him about how humanity had started according to academic study and how pictographs were developed, leading them to better communicate with each other, and how the races could have developed as simply as I could. We spoke about the Israelites, Greeks, Romans, Asians, and Indians. Occasionally we mentioned the Nazi occupation of Europe, the concentration camps, and how humanity has lost its humanness as the years rolled by. During those debates, Damon continually rolled more cigarettes containing his grass, which he desperately needed, and was unable to accept the reason why I did not participate. A psychic artist, Marion Ruffin, had once painted a spirit guide portrait for him, depicting a Tibetan monk bearing the name Magoya, probably invented by her. This guide was allegedly putting ideas in Damon's mind when he had a few interesting questions. No matter what has been spoken about, he had the tendency to twist the conversation by asking something totally irrelevant. However, we have been able to talk on how those colorful races came to be, he questioning if they came from other planets. Who could guess what he had been told previously, and his private psychic, Christie, was often mentioned. In regard to aerial phenomena observed everywhere around the globe, which he ardently questioned, we need to ask ourselves like Brinsley Le Poor Trench and his contemporaries did back in the 1960s. Can we really be alone in the universe? Our sciences tell us that the universe is populated by a multitude of galaxies, solar systems, and many habitable planets. We now realize that the entire universe cannot be empty. Therefore, it is only logical to consider that those others from elsewhere have been involved with humanity throughout history. Perhaps those from elsewhere are just like the humans living on Earth. And if this is true, we should be able to communicate with them. One may need to discover his own place in the real world first. One needs to acknowledge that there is enough evidence proving the existence of a close relationship between the world's belief systems and so-called aliens from elsewhere. If one still desires to view all of this as fantasy, one needs to understand that many of man's belief systems are also based on fantasies. Damon often jarringly intruded, demanding, "Well, when are they going to show themselves? Look, we came all the way. Will they now show themselves? Will they land? Will they pick us up?" He had the tendency of grabbing people's chins, as he also did to me, forcing me to look into his eyes. That was one of the ugliest assaults one can experience, but he did not see it as an assault, for it was apparently his tradition. If Serapis did not interfere mentally, speaking telepathically, that our so-called friend behaves like a child, wanting to have the first-hand experience on demand, I would certainly treat him more aggressively, and that would be completely against my nature. Upon hearing my verbalized thoughts, his friends will surely not believe him. He was highly agitated, shouting, "What do you mean, Soren? You think it's bullshit?" Or, he inevitably added, "There are things you know, but you don't tell me everything. Professore, why? Many people around the world claim to have seen UFOs reaching speeds of light, making sharp turns in the sky, and some have even photographed them, just like I did. I'd say they must be highly advanced." To which he exclaimed, Professore, they are gods." He was convinced that they knew everything needing to be known. When are they going to take us on board and let us meet their women? I tried to explain that no matter where they might have originated from, they all seem to follow the same pathways when we listen to people claiming to have seen them. But his response was always the same. "I know this is what I mean, It is what I was seeing on television. It would be so wonderful if we could speak of realities, even if it had some logic, when explaining aerial phenomena and how they traveled. I wished I was talking to my brother, who was a well-established physicist, but talking something like this to someone without any knowledge about gravitational and inertial fields and where those fields fluctuated was impossible. Whenever I verbalized my thoughts on some scientific subject or quoted from books I had read, the other stared blankly or immediately declared, "Ah, Professore, it makes sense. This is what I mean, you know? This is what I mean. Maybe they are coming a little late." I told him that they were probably using very strong lights to move their vehicles in the sky, and his habitual response was, "Ah, lights. Yep, Professore. When will they come? When? When? When?" Let us not forget that people are predisposed by their social status and are usually educated in contradictory ideals. Do unto others as you would like it to be done unto you. However, Damon repeatedly shouted, "Kick their butts, so that they can do things for you. And, to succeed, you have to yell and shout at people." Worse still was that Damon thought of me as a go-between with higher intelligences. He was vehemently expecting me to produce an enormous wand in order to perform miracles, just like Moses or the wizards of old. Obviously, some people are lacking in wisdom, and others choose to be pretenders. Some believe everything they are told, while others put themselves on top of a pedestal, hoping to be worshipped. I have seen many examples of this. Consider the witnesses, and now Damon. Self-discovery may help. Remember, there are those who belong to a thoroughly hated breed, simply because they are different. Others are stuck in their beliefs. People first need to step out of their shells and be free. Unfortunately, many are still being told not to go outside their own circles, for they are instructed there is desolation and destruction out there. Have they ever been outside before preaching others not to do so? Let us also remember that the world's history endlessly repeats. There have been a great number of prophets in man's past, and even the Bible is full of their stories, predicting doom and gloom. Wesley Le Trench, in his book Operation Earth, makes mention of this very issue. Some others prefer to ignore. What we observe today has happened before, as one can discover when studying the past intently. Perhaps we do not need to go looking for the proof of circumstances towards what such prophecies point at. Will there be a way out? Will there be a period of true peace on earth? Can we expect major changes in our lives? Ancient records show that those from elsewhere were overseeing the ancient cultures, and the tradition of extraterrestrial visits to Earth is not new. Ancient artists have also painted them in their masterpieces. According to Bible wisdom, and what people like Jehovah's Witnesses have been preaching for decades, Christ is going to throw the devil into prison for 1,000 years at the time of Armageddon, and the faithful will be saved and resurrected. Until that time has expired, when he will test the faithful one last time. It is written, "And when the 1,000 years are finished, Lucifer shall be loosed." However, one would like to believe that the earth of today is being observed and helped directly or indirectly by those from other realms. According to current information, there are those who are diligently interacting with extraterrestrials, some of whom are apparently already living amongst us. Jacques Vallée speaks of many unsolved cases regarding UFO phenomenon and interstellar people in his book Anatomy of a Phenomenon. Whereas Janet and Colin Bard ask, "Are we really alone?" in their book Life Beyond Planet Earth. The question remains, Proverbs of Solomon, chapter 10, verse 21 states, "The lips of the righteous feed many, but the foolish die for the lack of understanding." When I started my unfortunate journey in November 1996, for the duration of a little over a month, it was not ideally anticipated, although some of my discoveries might have carried more weight as to the importance of knowledge gleaned from a variety of sources, had it not been for the circumstances forced upon me. I found great truth in the words of that young Jewish man at Damon's. My intention was to decipher some of the ancient texts and conduct research into other matters of interest, but I was constantly reminded that at the end I would regret the day I was born. In reality, this journey has been rich with much mistreatment. Once again, it was proven to me, true friends are like diamonds, precious and rare. False friends are like autumn leaves, found everywhere. We flew from Melbourne to Sydney, followed by an overnight stopover in Bangkok and a long flight to Athens. Then we took another flight in a derelict Greek Airbus to Cairo, Egypt, where we shared a partially organized program. Later, we flew from Cairo to Frankfurt and to Los Angeles, followed by a trip to Peru. However, only after returning home could I enjoy the sounds and images I had captured with my recording equipment and cameras, whereas during the actual journey it was extremely difficult to do anything in Damon's presence. Spending even an hour with him was most trying, and he was beginning to emotionally hurt me by not giving me a chance to think, for I had been forced to answer his thousandfold repeated questions, enduring his inappropriate mannerisms and unethical behavior. Whenever I had any opportunity, I was the happiest man in the world, for I could at least ponder on more positive thoughts, often as inspired. Every single individual living on earth deserves every joy and happiness, even when one is forever being criticized by someone who they traveled with. Damon could not accept anything else other than his ways being the only reality. The majority of my nights were stolen away by unnecessary debates I was forced to endure. Whenever I had a chance in the late night hours, I sat silently in a corner and recorded my impressions of the day, occasionally as inspired by other benevolent but invisible friends. It is also possible that I was inspired by another aspect or counterpart of myself from elsewhere. I was continually chastised for my wrong ways of living, enduring severe abuse in words and rough mannerisms. One could perhaps forgive him, but it did not excuse his behavior. Nobody's behavior should control anybody. We all have the strength and wisdom to do so on our own. It is more important to be accepted than to be always self-righteous. To always be happy cannot be possible until we are able to love and accept who we are and where we are at. When in the plane, Damon continued to preach. From a business point of our trip, he was extraordinarily excited and wanted to have something tangible so that he could tell his friends back home he had seen them. Obviously, the reason for his traveling was only to see UFOs. Otherwise, why do you take me there? Prior to this trip, I had given him some recordings I made in regard to visitors like Alizantil and friends in space and on Earth as a story with an important moral issue. He was keenly interested in the subject matter. Food offered on the plane was of no importance to him, and one could hear him shout, "Guys, Serapisi, Mayan, Alizantil, all of them." They have to show me something, proving a lot of philosophy?" After a short pause, he would continue with his song. "But I'm very good with philosophy." I was incessantly advised not to waste any of my films or audio tapes while I recorded the ambience or speaking my inspired thoughts into them. I did not realize that they were only reserved for our more important considerations. Our so-called conversations became very fiery and hurtful. There was an atmosphere of resent all the time. Damon was also an excessively indecisive individual. If he made a decision, it would, for some unfathomable reason, be followed by undoing it. He would start a project and soon after stop it, often unadvised from his invisible guardian when having his shower in the morning. Advising me unendingly, he repeated over and over, "There are 3 things people seek for and kill each other for. They are beauty, intelligence, and money. And I have got all 3. Alas, I had to respond to him forever. What did they say? Did Shirley get anything when she came home? Did she say, "Yes, I saw," other than what they showed her in the car? I could only extremely cautiously respond, but he never listened, instead butting in. "Forget about it. She was freaking out." One could only appear as if agreeing with him. These words are exactly as they have been spoken in my recordings. "No, the movie actor, taking her from here and going again from there to the other place. Of course, it's not making any business." After a pause, "I'm telling you, if I am not happy, if nothing happens, they know the time for us. Look, we don't ask. We tell them that we want something." Anything intellectually spoken was invariably followed by something else to make one feel embarrassed for being an intellectual. I was bombarded with, "What do they say? I don't know what you know. I am much stronger than what they think. Much stronger. Serapis can understand." While the flight was progressing, and when he finally decided to move to the opposite side of the cabin to sleep, I felt relieved. In reality, I enjoyed my aloneness, to be able to have a little quiet time. I could now take photographs from the windows next to which I was seated. It was then I noticed a number of colorful lights outside and took several pictures of the spectacle, also videoing them. However, when he was awake, upon my telling him about the good news, he was frustrated, shouting at me, "Why didn't you wake me up? Why? Why?" In fact, I had tried, but he would not wake up, and I did not want to miss the opportunity. I was regarded as only talking to members of the invisible realm. That was perhaps the reason why he always questioned me. "What did they tell you? You were talking to them." I felt constantly obliged to respond, hoping that something exciting would happen soon. There have been a number of UFO hotspots throughout Australia which still remain active, let alone the well-documented Westall High School incident on 6th of April 1966 near Melbourne. Many such events have for some reason been silenced by certain authorities, and the people witnessing them advised to think that what they have seen was either illusionary or did not exist. Even a large number of students and their teachers were forced not to mention anything to anybody, although they had all seen something unusual, something physical, and not of any Earth-related technology. Maybe one needed not to go overseas to witness such a phenomenon after all. Again, in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 12, one reads, "He that despiseth his neighbor is void of wisdom, but a man of understanding holdeth his peace." Although not at all religiously inclined, I have to agree with this. Damon often declared, everybody listens to successful people. To be successful, you must have plenty of money, you must be intelligent, and charming. However, no matter how tired and exhausted one might have felt, it seemed his unending lectures on his personal philosophies and advice carried more weight through the night hours and whenever he chose. He literally believed he owned people. Repeating himself often, he advised me, if I don't see anything, just having a good time, just talking, just discovering things and finding things out, God forbid what I will do. I was continually subjected to these kinds of threats from the moment we set foot in the airport. On the other hand, he was introducing himself to others as the Son of God and a spoiled brat at that. Professore, if you want to be famous, you got to be very good or very bad. When you are good, everybody thinks of you. But when you are bad, nobody forgets you. He had a fixed idea of obtaining a stick, or perhaps a wand, for apparently the old patriarch Moses had one, and Damon had to see UFOs, demanding to be taken aboard. He believed he could command those traversing space and time to come down whenever he desired due to his being very successful. On the way to Europe, we experienced a few mild turbulences on board the aeroplane, but the discordance one was forced to endure with Damon was more overpowering. I was happy when he decided to sleep on the opposite side of the cabin. That is when I could at least contemplate, have some solace, and concentrate on my own inspirational thoughts. Again I became aware of the dancing lights outside in the vastness of expanse during the night. I could not wake him, and indeed did not want to. I was not imagining those oblong and spherical lights outside the plane, and I have been able to capture them on film. I was almost mesmerized by their colorful display. They kept dancing while maintaining a cine-wave pattern. As they did so, their bright lights streamed through the unshuttered windows, creating a scene over the passengers' heads, a visual spectacle like the sun's rays in the morning, but there was no sunrise at the time. There were not any of the glorious red and orange glows when the sun sets, but blue, white, purple, and greens. It was so amazing to see how people ignored such an unexpected phenomenon. I still wondered, was I really seeing what was experienced, and felt the need to verify it by asking the stewardess what she thought they were. My questions remained unanswered for a while. Did I need to take it as confirmation, or what I observed also being visible to others, but were under instruction to ignore it? When one of them offered me a cool glass of mineral water, I told her that there was probably going to be another sighting of a similar kind within the next hour or so. I was unsure why I said that, and hoped she was not going to think of me as weird. When the experience was repeated as I predicted, one of the hostesses came to me to say that these things have been happening often, but we did not take them very seriously. We both smiled. Soon after I heard a voice and thought somebody behind was talking to me. Was it my earphones, perhaps? But it was neither. I did not have earphones on, and Damon was fast asleep at the time. A short while later, the voice became clearer. What you have seen was just for you. I responded with, Why me? Then I thought that perhaps I was so tired that hearing voices was an indication that I should fall asleep soon, while there was an opportunity to do so. Maybe my brain was already in an alpha phase, and I was already dreaming. Then again, how could it be, without even closing my eyes, and still completely aware of my environment and the ever-present engine noise? I remembered for a brief moment attending UFO club meetings over the years and hearing other people's stories. One of my friends was a commercial pilot, and we used to meet from time to time. He and his wife told me about their unusual experiences when flying, but they avoided talking about the incidents they witnessed to anybody due to fear of being ridiculed or considered as UFO-minded eccentrics. Such events have often been registered on radar and reported by many people from all around the world. When Damon woke up, one had to endure a string of illogical debates. He started asking me why I chose misery, desolation, and unhappiness, or why I preferred to live in the mud instead of living in an artistic and elite environment like he did. I was even graciously told that it was really stupid on my part giving away my all to my ex-wife and children, in the process rendering myself very poor. Why Serapis Bey did not make me rich like his guardian angel Megoya? Why, Professore? Why? When in Bangkok, our entire stay was completely ruined, primarily because he did not want to go anywhere and see anything of this great historic city, preferring to stay within the hotel complex called Amari to literally interrogate me. Although physically and mentally exhausted, I found myself answering his unthought-of and endlessly repeated questions just to keep the peace. It seemed he believed that I was obliged to respond to him as a friend. But was he really a friend, as he claimed? Even when I was falling asleep, he often had a few more questions, leaving me no time to relax and replenish myself. Oh, how much I needed to doze off for at least 10 to 15 minutes. During this time of our supposed conversation, he kept smoking his so-called herbal mixes. The entire day was spent talking about his great achievements as a businessman, complaining about his partners who attempted to cheat him, his philosophies, followed by criticizing my lifestyle. They were, as he called them, spiritual values. I wished he would give me a little break for a few short minutes to rest before making our way to the airport. Alas, we had to continue with our so-called spiritual debates as seen fit by him all night through. Whenever I had an opportunity to escape to the restrooms, I spoke all my impressions onto the tape recorder in some trepidation, hopefully not being discovered recording, for it would end up with me being chastised again. I would most certainly be renamed as an idiot, or make me feel like a guilty teenager. During the late hours of the night, Damon kept lecturing me while seated in the hotel restaurant. I was told I was going to see things, meet people, encounter craft, and meet this gorgeous girl. What's going to be my gift, Professore? Remember, I am the Son of God, and I deserve it. He was obviously told by Christie that he was going to travel with someone special and was going to receive an extraordinary gift. That someone special had to be me. He hoped to be given a spacecraft or UFO for his personal use, and a stick, for he was very rich and successful. He, like a few other people, was taking the words of psychics as gospel, therefore making it very hard to explain anything to him. Once I gave him a bracelet I found very early one morning on the steps of my dwelling, and I had no idea where it came from, thinking that it was deliberately put there, ultimately to be given to Damon. It was made of pure silver and had unusual signs inside. On the other hand, maybe it was a gift from an unknown source, and was intended for me, but I never wore anything like that, or even purchased one. Maybe it was to assist me to enjoy some peace. Damon had also heard about some of my experiments in regard to mind over matter, but being a skeptic, I did not take things lightly and conducted further experiments to discover the reality of things. He did not know that. It is true that thought can influence molecules of substances, such as water, as it has been tested by a number of other scientists. I also had my share in doing so. I was intending to conduct a similar test, but with photographic film. I mentioned to him that friends at home were going to take photographs using their equipment with fresh sets of unused negative films, while I transmitted my own image, or things I was looking at, to be included as extras in their pictures, although unsure about the expected outcome. I was going to do it either from Greece or Egypt by conducting spatially designed meditations. He immediately demanded, I want to be included in them also. In the circumstances, I contemplated returning back home immediately when in Europe, but did not. I should have noticed the warning signals long before, especially when he claimed, "A good artist is a dead artist. Look, the vision I got 2 months ago, remember I told you this morning? There's no doubt in my mind that I was taken to the pyramids. There's no way that I've been taken to the pyramids that night. There is no way," Damon continued with his wisdom, explaining that, as he remembered, he was opening something, shoving things around, and he did not know anything before going inside. Suddenly, and out of the blue, shouting something totally different, he continued with his outburst. I was compelled to explain things in relation to his relentless questions. I spoke about other dimensions, different universes, other possible civilizations, and their technologies. It has always been very strange and very tiresome to jump from one subject to another while trying to keep track of his mood swings in order to keep relative peace. The other often raised his voice to say, "I was bashing my brains for the last 5 years for this." Whatever it was is anyone's guess. Another time he shouted, "No, you see, I think they are putting all those questions in your mouth in order for me to answer, as if I don't want to see them. Because this is not the words I say. This is coming from somewhere else. From somewhere else, you understand?" He often emphasized that he never visited places of interest, nor had any contact with the locals, preferring to remain within his own circle of friends, rolling joints, talking over personal issues. To change their minds, Moses had this stick to do things with. It's important to show how it's done. That's what the people could look at. In a different part of his important lecture he propounded, "Our little friend Ani, the little pharaoh, is waiting for us there in Cairo. That's how I believe, because I was dreaming about him. I'm seeing him, like, as coming from the sky and saying hi to me, calling my name and disappearing. Almost on a daily basis he would repeat, 'You see, people couldn't see the idea. Here is a good-looking guy, an intelligent guy, and had plenty of money. They could kill someone like him. They all look for those things, money and looks and intelligence. Someone will be jealous.'" He felt the need to proudly boast about his generous nature. He spoke about his experience with a blue-eyed, gorgeous girl in Bali at the beach. As I had recorded all those lectures on his demand, listening to them with a new freshness, I was hearing him say how frightened he was when he had all kinds of hallucinates on the table, and his friend introduced him to her, who later borrowed $10,000 from him. But Damon told her she had to go to Melbourne to get the money. Although it was a lot of money, on Christie's advice, he decided not to demand its return. "I finished my duty with this lady. Perhaps she helped me in one of my past lives, when we were slaves or something," Christie told me. We were jumping from one subject to another, like on a springboard. "Suren, I remember myself 5 years ago, when I may be intelligent, but did not have much knowledge about what I have today." No matter what the subject, it was constantly interrupted by Damon advising me how I should live. "We start with some power, and show them this, and this, and this. I don't know what. I expect them to know everything. If they know my future, they should know everything." This would make anybody wonder what we were really talking about. All I can tell you now is that shortly afterwards the subject was changed, and we were speaking about the prophecies of Nostradamus, followed by Damon's predictions. "Starvation is one of the things. It's coming to the west, to the west." Then he shouted again, "This is all good for a book, Suren. This is all good for a book. I want to see them. Until then, that's it. You will know." After a short pause, for he had to take yet another puff of his herbal mix, he continued, telling me that he did not expect Mayan to step in front of him when she came. "Before I left, everybody came to me and said, 'All I want you to tell us is it or isn't it? That's all.'" I was forced to listen to his great wisdom unceasingly. "Unless you come and say, and that is my philosophy everybody knows now, I know where to start for people to be shown. Not to show them bullshit, but show them what I see. I don't want to talk. All I want is to show them. I want to be able to tell them also, not just to show." Another of his amazing philosophies was again expressed in his wise words. "Look, I live in a crazy world of money. Money is power. That is the world I come from. You are an artist. You talk to people on the same level. I don't. I argue, I shout, and I scream at people in order to get something. Something is protecting me, but I don't know what." While on flight to Athens, Damon asked me to request our friends to put doubts in their minds, but I could not fathom whose minds he was referring to. After some while, it transpired that he wanted doubts to be put in his neighbors' minds, so that his house was protected. Maybe, as he often told me, I was too slow in understanding things, and therefore he felt the need to repeat himself. During this portion of the journey, I believe I experienced astral projections when I was finally left alone for short periods during the night. We were to arrive in Athens in approximately 9 hours and 50 minutes. As usual, while the crew demonstrated safety precautions, Damon managed to relentlessly throw his vitally important questions at me, thus helping one to thoroughly regret undertaking this journey with him. When he decided to drift into sleep and the cabin lights were dimmed, I witnessed one other sighting of brilliant lights outside the aeroplane from my window. A born skeptic, I questioned their authenticity. When hearing some young people and children asking each other, "Did you see that?" I felt happier, knowing I was not hallucinating. Some flight attendants appeared mildly perturbed, but I was not going to be bothered by that, not even desirous to question anybody. I took a few more photographs of those dancing lights, without any concern about the outcome.